A very warm welcome, everyone. My name is Sushant Verma. I'm an architect, an educator, and a design technologist. I'm going to be talking about smart education, sowing seeds of change. So, my interpretation about bringing and spreading smiles is to create education. And let's take you through the journey of that. So, let me talk about the world population right now. We're about 8 billion people right now on this planet, which was predicted to be kind of done by 2026, but supposedly we are 8 billion in 2022, which is what the statistics of the world population is like and how it has grown. But I want to touch upon another aspect, that how many people have access to technology. The number of technology users have been quite less in comparison to what the number of people exist on the planet. But it has been rising slowly. Over a period of time, technology has been permeating into our life in a very large way. Let me give you an example of internet, for example. So in 1994, when internet was at its conception stage, only 0.4% of people had access to internet, and it slowly grew, and it grew at a tremendous pace. And in 2014, which was as per the statistics last, about 40% of people had the access to internet. Talking about 2022, we I think have about 50 to 60% of people having access to internet. And there are a lot of tech giants. For example, Mark Zuckerberg has been working on a mission to create 100% of the population having access to internet. That's a lot of connectivity we are talking about. Now, this is only one technology that we are talking about right now. But imagine that everyone had an access to technology, how we could actually change the world and bring about a positive change. So there is also a theory, it's called the diffusion of innovation. Now, any technology or innovation that comes into the industry, comes into the market, gets introduced in a manner where only 2.5% of people start to adopt that technology or innovation. Now, these are the people who we call as innovators. And only if it successfully moves to the next step, then the next 13.5% of people start to adopt to that. These are called early adopters. And then we have the next 34% of early majority, and the next 34% of late majority, and next 16% of laggards. Now imagine the technology has to go through this bell curve for it to sustain and be accessible to 100% of the population that exists. Now, this was a theory which was coined by Everett Rogers in 1962, who was a communication professor. But let me give you the perspective and the context to it with respect to the technologies that exist right now and which we have access to. Now, for example, if you look at Android, only early adopters have started to use that or leverage the technology. iPhone is a little far ahead, starting to get into the early majority of population, which means about 60% of people do not still have access to these kind of technologies right now, which is fair enough. And if we talk of, let's say, an email application like Gmail, that has already been adopted by the late majority as well. It's become quite a popular thing. One of my favorite is a compact disc, a CD-ROM. Many of us would not even know right now, like especially the Gen Z, that what exactly is a CD-ROM for, because it's right now obsolete. It's not even used because the way the data is stored has absolutely changed. We are on cloud storage and various kind of drives. So compact disk has lost its life, I would say. A technology which has gone to the 100% of people of the access is the TV and newspaper. These are also sort of technologies or innovations which actually led to a usage by almost 100% of people. Now, this is the typical Rogers bell curve through which all the technologies have to go through. Some of them will fall through in between. Some of them may get accepted later on. It really depends. Now, let me come back to who am I and what do I do, and why am I talking about technology? So I'm an architect, a design technologist, and an educator. And what I try to do is bridge the gap between design and technology and bring that to people, designers, various kind of designers like myself, to bring about a positive change in what we are doing in this world in terms of the built environment, the kind of architecture, the kind of design, the kind of spaces that we are creating. Now, I would also like to kind of, deviate a bit to talk about Simon Sinek. He's a very popular American author and a motivational speaker. He talks about this very interesting example of this golden circle, where you have why, how, and what. This is a typical golden circle, very simple way of communicating, an information that how people think. And let me give you an example of someone I really admired always, Steve Jobs from Apple. I think most of us know about Steve Jobs, his life and the innovation and what he managed to do. Now, Simon Sinek gave an example in one of his TEDx talks before about how 95% of people think outside in. They think about the what, then they think about the how, and then some people think about the why. That actually means, and giving an example in the process of Apple. For example, Apple sells computers, beautifully designed computers, let's say. So what if an Apple marketing campaign used to sound like this? You start with a what? We make computers. How? We design them really well. Why? We're trying to change the world. Doesn't sound very appealing, right? Nobody, I think, is going to get attracted to the campaign as well. But Apple thinks absolutely differently inside out, and which is what is the common thing between all the innovators and the change makers across the globe in a very simple way. You think about the why first. We are trying to change the status quo. We're trying to create a change. That is the why we're talking about. That is what they're trying to sell. And then you talk about the how. We are creating equipments, computers, various kind of electronics, which are beautifully designed. What? This is our product. So the campaign sounds absolutely very different. So this is a very inspiring thing. And I've always found this very fascinating as this golden circle, that you need to talk about the why first and then the how and what. And this exactly was pretty much the story of my life and my journey as a professional and personally as well, that the why became the most important thing of why we are doing what we're doing, basically. I'll come to that in terms of why exactly are we trying to do things. But let me just shift back onto architecture, which is my field of expertise right now. So 1950s, for example, we look back, 70 years back. This is how architecture was produced. This is how drawings were made, which was pretty efficient for that time. But then the technology evolved. And of course, the computers started to come in and we started to use computers. Then now we also have other kind of technologies, for example, coding, algorithmic learning, generative design, all sorts of complex technical terms, which I won't not get into details of. But we have the access to technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, which is changing the world. So there has definitely been a change from then and now what we are. What previously used to be like simple mechanical equipments is now computerized and digitized. How we used to measure by hand, now we can measure digitally through a tablet or any other application, which all of us have access to. Previously, we used to use sketch pads, which was the early version of computers and CAD in my field. And now we have touch screens and various kind of other means to kind of create things. Now, this is the change that we're talking about. And this is what has changed and drastically changed in terms of the acceptance to technology. But are we accepting it fully is something that I've always questioned. To us, in architecture, technology is still like behaving like or feeling like that Stone Age man who's trying to just figure out how to use the technology, because the pace of evolution of technology has been much faster than how we are adapting to it. A few years back, I was one of the guest editors for this magazine where I wrote this article, which really kind of sort of became viral in the industry which I belong to. And I clearly wrote the heading was why architects hate technology. There was a sort of sarcasm involved in that why are we not able to adopt to technologies at the pace at which they are evolving? And that started to become our mission in what we are doing. And for me, technology is basically a technique of doing something. So what I do is I run this organization called RAT Lab, where RAT stands for Research in Architecture and Technology. And what we're trying to do as a studio, as a design studio, is create various kind of spaces, designs, projects. We are involved in residential, commercial, hospitality, various kind of things. How we are trying to do it is through creating various advanced technological tools, which allow us to make buildings and designing more efficient. It allows us to create a much better impact, a much lesser carbon footprint, and is able to design spaces which are much more complex to create and realize. But now we have the technology to actually create that. And using these kind of tools, we are able to understand how a space would look like, how a city would function, how traffic movement would happen, how we can understand and dissipate rainwater to channelize them for landscape, and various other kind of things. And we now have the access to the tools at the tip of our finger right now, where we can change the form and the design while we are designing and able to efficiently realize if it's going to be functional or not. And this is the power that we are trying to create through technology. And just giving you a visual glimpse of journey, what we have had in the last almost a decade, I would say, of into architecture and design is creating these kind of spaces. And it's very easy and evident to kind of identify that there is a certain kind of a style, there is certain kind of a complexity, and there is certain kind of an elegance that exists only because we are able to have the technology at our access. Now, when having technology at the access, we are able to create such interesting spaces which are becoming the future. Uh, if you look at, for example, products like these or spaces like these, for example, all of these have a certain inherent complexity, but this is not complex to the computer or even to the humans, because we are using technology at our disposal. And I'm just going to run through various kind of iterations of spaces, interior spaces, experience centers, lighting design, restaurant design, facades. We've also collaborated with fashion designers, roof structures, various kind of building facades, using 3D printing, using augmented reality, using virtual reality, and now artificial intelligence as well. Using all of these tools to create an architecture that is going to shape the future. And the future we are talking of is not 5 years or 10 years ahead of us. We're talking of 50 or 100 years ahead of us. And this is the power of architecture and design, and how we can bring about a change in the built habitat, basically. These tools, of course, rely on a lot of computational power. So we're relying on how the computer's power is existing to be able to control things, various kind of stadiums, temples, which are in process, creating algorithms that design spaces for us. And this list is endless and growing and evolving as we are growing as a studio as well. Now, this is the kind of journey that I'm showing you at a glimpse of the 10 years, like how we're able to create an impact in the public space design or landscape design or facade design or creating futuristic commercial spaces like these, or even landscapes like these, for example. These are all upcoming projects which we have been working on. The beauty of that is these might look very complex, but they are very simple to execute. They are more cost effective. They are more energy efficient, less carbon footprint, and all of these factors are we're able to manifest and articulate into spatial design by using cutting edge technologies. Now, this is what takes me back into why technology becomes important, whether we are able to create restaurants or skyscrapers. Now, let's start with the why, why we are trying to do this. And this is exactly the start of the conversation about what exactly we are trying to do. So talking of the why, we are trying to do a very simple thing of just bridging the gap between design and technology, which I think is a huge gap right now. And also at the same time, bring about a positive change in the system, the profession we are in right now. I have lived in India. I've lived in United Kingdom. I've lived in United States. I did my studies in India, did my masters from London in UK. Worked there for a few years with technology and architecture companies, moved on to US. During this period of time, I also managed to visit about 20 countries at different times, which were all related to work and projects, and also try to understand the culture and the change that exists in their ecosystem, I would say. Now, how do we bring about this change is the question that we are trying to ask ourselves. 2016, rewind back to 2016, which is 6 years back. I had the opportunity to do my first TEDx talk in Gurgaon, which was called "Smart Cities Need Smarter Design Education." So what we were trying to create and seed at that time was just a little seed, and that how do we create smart cities? We need to have smart design education. So this is where our mission started, to create smart education. And I truly believe in Nelson Mandela's quote, which I would share with you, is the education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So at one end, we are trying to create a top-down approach to change the industry in our own ways. At the same time, we required a bottom-up change of creating education, creating accessible education, which can change people who can create an impact by using technology. And this is where our mission started in the academia, where we started Rat Lab Education. This is back in 2015. And we started to question ourselves at the beginning that how smart is our education? And if we started to look back into how the situation was, 100 years back, in the education, this is what a classroom looked like 100, 150 years back. Surprisingly, this is what it looks like now, which is the interesting part, that no change has happened in the way we are educated. And this is where we thought, okay, let's start to use technology. Let's start to use technology in a way where things can become much more interesting. Of course, we induce technology. A student would have a similar kind of a feeling. If you get bored in the 1960s in a classroom, you get bored in front of a computer now on a screen. So we had to create something very interactive. So this is how we're trying to do this. We started creating these educational platforms and workshops across the country. And this is a time where I moved back to India to start bringing about a change. And this is the journey that we took to create education in computational design, which actually means design technology, if I talk in a generic sense, to create the education of design technology in India. Over a period of time, we did a lot of workshops, we did a lot of programs in different cities, in different countries. To name a few, I have them on the screen: London, New York, Milan, Tokyo, Taipei, Cairo, in Ukraine, Belarus, and it's still counting. And in cities in India across like New Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Chandigarh, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Coimbatore, Pune, and the list has been counting. So we started these 2-day programs and then slowly moved into a 6-month program as well. And through these workshops, this is all student work that you're going to see right now. Students who had very limited or absolutely no exposure to design technologies, and using technology, they were able to understand how to create meaningful spaces, complex things in a simple way. And this is all a product and the output of workshops. This was from Taiwan, for example. These were again few workshops I was involved in Taiwan back in 2014, actually, rather, where we were trying to understand different cultures and education systems. And again, you will see a lot of glimpses of workshops, programs we did. Pandemic started to hit us. We started an online program, which was absolutely global, where we could have tutors from different parts of the world, teach students from different parts of the world, and curate it in India, basically. And through these programs, every year we have been creating more global platforms and communication. But we all still had this question at the back of our head, that how smart is our education? Are we getting smarter with our education? So 2017, we started the program. It was a pilot project for us. It's called Smart Labs, which was to create a hybrid program, which means we could have anyone in any part of the world be a part of the program and understand and learn technology over a 6-month period. So that allowed someone to actually not just getting exposed to technology, but also start to understand and apply technology in a hands-on process. The growth happened. It continued over a program where students were more involved. We created digital fabrication, performative design, interactive design, and students got more involved to learn about technology. Again, I would say students had zero exposure or very minimal exposure to technology before this became a part of these programs. And over the last 6 years, we have had 7 batches, about 150 students graduating out of this program who are creating an impact now in different parts of the world, in different cities of India, and creating more educational platforms and growing this plant forward. So it's actually about sowing the seeds that we started and how it is creating a bottom-up change in the profession as well. And with these kind of innovative approaches, students are able to really change their directions, change the way in which how they want to bring in a change and impact, and they learn a global collaborative manner as well. Through these things, we of course look into 3D printing, augmented reality, virtual reality, and lots of things, and students end up producing these variety of fantastic work that they produce over a 6-month period. And so we're basically training young architects and students basically to create and understand technology, a change which we are able to bring in the professional world in this last decade, but doing the same thing through academia in a step-by-step process. This obviously has created a plethora of works, and now we have technology like artificial intelligence, which is at our disposal, which we can use to create these kind of interesting spaces. And these spaces are we are able to create on the click of a button, literally, which is kind of crazy. So the interesting part is that, back in the 70s, 1970s, we had the technology which could change our 80s. Back in the 80s, we had the technology which could change our 90s. Back in 90s, we had the technology which could change 2000s. But today, in 2022, we have the technology which can define our next 100 years. So it is very important that we get educated about these technologies. It is very important that we get adapted to these technologies and adopt these technologies in our workflows to create the sort of an impact. All of these visuals that you see right now are created by artificial intelligence through text prompts, which we are able to teach and introduce in our current program at Smart Labs. And this is the fascinating world in the way how architecture can actually be produced, human assisted, but computer generated. Now, human has to assist here. Computers are not replacing the humans. The role of humans has been just changing over this period of time. Now, let's talk a little bit about what exactly have we managed to do. And so far in the last 7 years, we managed to train and educate about 3,000 plus students and professionals through 150 plus workshops and programs in about 25 plus cities in 10 countries. This is the impact that we're trying to bring in and a change we're trying to bring in. And what we're trying to do next, a commitment I made in 2016 in my first TEDx talk rather, was to create a smart program, which is what Smart Labs is about. Today in 2022, it's kind of a mission that we're trying to take heads on to create an exclusive educational platform for Indian students specifically, which can create free workshops, free education, free mentorship, and a free learning platform. This is what our mission is right now, which is what we've been strongly working on right now. And our aim is to create a free and accessible education, which can give the power to change the world. Let me take this conversation to a slightly lighter note and give an example or an anecdote from a movie rather. So I don't know how many of you have seen this sci-fi movie. It's called Limitless. It actually has this drug which allows you to access 100% of your brain, which essentially we humans are not able to access, of course, to that percentage. For me, technology is that seed which can allow you to access 100% of your potential and start to change the world. And when we talk of diffusion curve and innovation in architecture and design, we are right at the crux where only 2.5% people have the access to. So the diffusion curve in innovation and architecture is only being accessed by 2.5% of people, and it is yet to be adopted by the rest of the majority of people, which is what we're trying to do. So whatever you do in life, I would just ask you to do the same thing. Ask yourself the same question, and why you are trying to do what you're doing. And if you do that, you're able to sow the seeds, teach, educate, and bring about a change in a bottom-up process. Thank you very much.